Welcome to Primal Armor, a podcast centered on helping each and every listener strive for a healthier tomorrow. I'm your host, Jeff Kimple, and I'll be covering every aspect within the field of health, helping you build that strong foundation for improving your physical health, mental health, emotional health, spiritual health, and more. It's time to take your personal wellness into your own hands, and Primal Armor is going to help you reach those goals. I just want to thank you for taking the time today to tune in and listen to today's topic. Enjoy. Before we get started into the episode, I just want to take a few seconds to thank today's sponsor, Anchor Podcasts. They allow me to create and edit these podcasts for you guys. They're also the ones who distribute this podcast to other platforms such as Spotify and the Apple Podcast app on your phone, so you guys can listen to it anywhere at any time. It's everything needed all in one app. I encourage you all to get started today. Go download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm and follow the podcast. We're back again here after a short break for episode 25. This week, we're doing another interview style of podcast. I really enjoy bringing others on and just picking their brain. And there's no one better than this week's guest. Today, we have Dr. Jeremy Lawson, a family and performance chiropractor. I've had the pleasure of knowing Jeremy for quite some time now, and we've had the ability to just sit down and relate on a higher level of our love of science behind health and fitness. I can say from the conversations that I've had with Jeremy so far that he's probably one of the smartest people I've ever met in this field. And I've been wanting to get him on here for months now, but due to all this COVID business going on and just busy schedules and busy lives, that it's taken a long time to get him on. And finally now, after a few months, I've finally been able to make that happen. So, unfortunately, there's quite a stigma behind chiropractor care that just put a fear on quite a lot of people these days. So I wanted to use today's episode to kind of explain to you guys the science behind why chiropractic care can and is a good choice and a good investment towards your overall health. So to get us started today, I'm going to let Jeremy give a little bit of an introduction of himself and what got him interested in chiropractic care in the first place.
Well, hey guys, like Jeff said, my name is Dr. Jeremy Lawson, and I'm a chiropractor. I graduated from Life University in Marietta, Georgia in 2018, and I've been practicing ever since. What led me to chiropractic is actually kind of different than how most people find chiropractic. For a lot of people, it's, my neck hurts, my back hurts, I'm having headache issues, so they went to the chiropractor. I was going to the chiropractor, just a buddy at the gym was a chiropractor, is a chiropractor, has been a good mentor of mine, and said, I think you're missing out on some recovery. When's the last time you got adjusted? I'm like, well, what's an adjustment? Like, I didn't know what he was talking about because I'd never been to a chiropractor at that time. So it my first introduction into it was more of a mindset change than, I typically had assumed chiropractic was. Like, I'm not in pain, why would I go? And what was really cool was not only did my performance in the gym start getting better, but I was sleeping better and I just felt more revitalized overall. But what was really cool about this office is they actually specialized in pediatrics. So about 85% of the population in that practice were kids, and a lot of them small kids under the age of 10. And they were doing some really cool stuff. There were kids with ADHD getting off their meds, and there were kids with sensory processing issues being able to, go in loud, noisy environments and be able to stay like a normal, sensory stable child, and just to kind of see those lifestyles change and to see the impact on not just those kids, but their entire families it was incredible. So I started digging in and asking more questions. And then when I learned more about the true philosophy behind chiropractic, it got its hooks in me, and I've been, addicted and trying to research and learn as much as I can ever since.
So where are you based out of?
I'm based out of Crystal Lake, Illinois. So just a little over an hour outside of Chicago in the northwest suburbs.
And I know you're always traveling around, so you're in the Dixon area a lot. So how does that work?
I was born and raised in Dixon. It's nice. I go back there about every 2 weeks. It gives me an excuse to come see some family and, treat some patients that I might not otherwise have along that way. One of the ways I've kind of modeled my practice is more kind of on-site care, where I go and meet people in the community. So there's a couple different CrossFit gyms I've been associated with, as well as a couple of local businesses, just to kind of meet people where they're at and make it a little bit more convenient for them.
So you have your own brick and mortar business and you just travel a little bit on the side?
Yes.
Cool. So obviously, like I stated earlier, with a lot of people, there's a bad stigma with chiropractic care. And you are in the field, and just what are your experiences with that, and kind of why do you think that is?
Well, I think there's a couple things that really kind of affect that. The biggest one is going to be mindset and philosophy. So most people, when they think of their doctor, they think of their allopathic doctor, their Western medicine doctor. And for the most part, Western medicine is still trying to understand what chiropractic actually does. And I don't mean that they're not smart enough to understand it, but it's philosophically very different from their model of healthcare. You know, a traditional medical doctor in the United States is trained to treat symptoms, and that the reduction of symptoms means someone is getting better. And I agree with them to an extent that symptoms are a problem, and we don't want to put an emphasis on, forgetting the rest of the body though. So where they look at it is, well, this is back pain. Here's some muscle relaxers, maybe stretch a little bit. We're going to look at it and say, okay, yeah, you've got back pain and that really sucks, but what led up to that? What was your lifestyle like leading up to that? It's very seldom that everyone who has back pain at all came because they were rear-ended by, someone going 65 on the interstate. Mm-hmm. It's usually been something that's led up to that. So instead, we're going to take the whole person and really start to analyze, what's going on in their entire body, with their lifestyle at home, and kind of look at it that way. Another thing is chiropractors as ourselves have kind of let ourselves become pigeonholed, so to speak, as the neck pain, back pain, headache doctors. So when we only let people know that we're useful when there's symptoms and nothing else, that's shame on us for that. The other aspect of that is if someone does go to a medical doctor, they're going to get a prescription, and that prescription is going to last for so long. And you go in for a sinus infection, you're going to get your Z-Pak or your, whatever antibiotic they're using for sinus infections now, mm-hmm. and say, take this for 14 days. If it's a really good doctor, they're not going to give you the 7-day dosage so that you only get part of it. And then it's raging back again a couple days later. They don't understand the concept of, hey, so when you come to a chiropractor, I don't want to go to the 3 times a week for a month, and it should just be, kind of wham bam, you're good in one adjustment. If it was that easy, we would charge a lot more than what we do. Right. But it's the mindset of understanding that is our prescription. The reason being is that your body didn't get into the state it's in overnight and in one day. So unfortunately, it does take longer to help the body heal. And that's the other way of looking at it too, is that with traditional medicine, we're looking more from an outside in perspective of what are we adding to the body to allow it to get through whatever ailment it's currently dealing with. Whereas with chiropractic, as we look for subluxation and we adjust the spine, the biggest thing we're trying to do is remove any interference in the nervous system so that the body can heal itself more effectively. We're trying to be more guides in the process of letting the body do its own unique, amazing things that it does, versus trying to change something from the outside in.
That's a good way of looking at it, because the way I always kind of looked at it was more like you're trying to fix the root cause of the problem, which in that aspect you are, but you're just kind of trying to find one aspect to kind of start at and work on, let alone like kind of what you were saying is letting the body have a better chance of healing itself.
Yeah, exactly. Just so the body accumulates stress, right? Like, and right now through the COVID situation, if moms, dads, if you were home e-learning with your kids, like that was stressful. For those of you that lost your jobs, that was incredibly stressful. Some of the people still don't have their jobs back. So we look at not just mental and emotional stress though, but there's 3 main types of stressors on the body. So there's physical trauma, like we know we shouldn't be in car accidents, but we also shouldn't sit all day and we shouldn't do the same repetitive movements all day. The other one is going to be chemical toxins. Like, not only should we not drink bleach, but what is in all of our cleaning products? How clean is our diet? I'm sorry to say, but veggie straws aren't actually a veggie. So, what are we doing to modify that thing that we're putting in our body the most? And then the biggest one that does oftentimes get overlooked is emotional stress and mental thought. So we also try to educate our patients on balancing those three, because we know that the better those three are balanced, the more likely they are to see better results while they're under our care, which is, it's the same lifestyle modifications that every doctor should be talking about, but unfortunately doesn't come up as often as it should.
Right. So let's just say I come to you for the first time, and I've been having this ton of chronic pain over all these years, and I'm very hesitant and afraid from everything I've heard from just the society today of chiropractors. What are you going to try to do to help me, ease my mind and change my mind for you to be able to help me?
Well, first I've got to listen, and that's, whether it's a really good personal trainer, a really good chiropractor, or any person in a service industry, we're here to serve you. So our first job and our first, obligation is to listen. I mean, you have those concerns and you have those fears, whether they be based on science or based on, a heresy or based on just, Facebook trolls. We still need to listen to those, because there's still things that are part of your environment that you're bringing in and are very real for you. We may have a very different mindset or thought process behind it, but if we just kind of push aside any concerns that a patient has, well, then we're not listening to that patient, and we're not going to get buy-in, because if your patients don't buy in, it makes it a lot harder for them to truly see a care plan through and to truly see results, because they're always going to be skeptical because you never listened to them in the first place. Now, based on what those concerns are, I have a couple different patients that they love getting manually adjusted, meaning me using my hands to adjust segments of their spine. But as soon as I touch their neck, they get anxiety, because they've seen one too many Jean-Claude Van Damme movies or Stallone movies where they think I'm actually strong enough to twist some guy's head off. I like to think I'm strong, but even I know I'm not that strong, so I'll check my ego right away. But no, it's your ability to adapt to the patient. And I think that's one of the biggest things that chiropractors at some level have kind of hurt the profession, because they try to make it, well, this is my way, this is how I do it. If you're not going to do it my way, then you're not coming to my office. And hey, kudos to them for standing on their standards, but at the same time, I'd rather meet my patients where they're at and kind of modify what I do, whether it's my technique or my style, my communication. I'd rather them leave feeling that I cared enough to do something different than me be, feeling good on my high horse and have one less patient that I helped.
Right. So we kind of went into it a little bit earlier of how chiropractic care helps the body heal itself, so to say. And I know both me and you know the benefits that chiropractic care can bring to all the different systems in the body. But can you kind of explain that a little bit further for the listeners of just how it ties everything together for better health?
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of picking back off of what I mentioned earlier of those three T's, right? So we've got trauma, toxins, and thoughts. And we know those are constantly bombarding our bodies. Well, what we look at is the nervous system as a whole, because, while every organ system is important, the brain is the one telling the whole body what to do all the time, right? So what we're going to look at is, how does everything that's coming into our body from our environment, how is it affecting our nervous system? And more specifically, how is it affecting the autonomic nervous system? So guys, when I say autonomic, I want you to think automatic. The parts of the nervous system that just does what it does because it's constantly happening. It's our heart beating, it's our lungs pumping, it's our blood vessels dilating or constricting because we either need more blood or we need less blood. It's our digestive system either speeding up because we're in a relaxed state, or we're in the middle of a WOD. We don't really need to worry about digesting lunch we had a couple hours ago. So it's how do we navigate what the body's doing that we don't even have to think about. So that autonomic nervous system has two main sides. You have the sympathetic side, which is the side almost everyone can say without a doubt, it's the fight or flight, it's the stress response. The other side of that same coin is the parasympathetic nervous system. So literally just think opposite of sympathetic. So if the sympathetic is my fight or flight, well then the kind of crude way it's known, the parasympathetic is known as, is the rest and digest. Some people will call it the feed and breed, but it does so much more. It's honestly our main governing system of communication. Because think about it, if I was stressed out right now because a saber-toothed tiger was behind me, or I just upset my wife and she's giving me devil eyes, which isn't happening right now, it's just an example. But that's going to change the state of how I am. So it's going to make me more nervous. I'm not going to be able to speak as well because I'm either terrified one of those two things is going to kill me, and one of them is still alive right now. So our body's constantly perceiving threats, and it's constantly perceiving stress. So we look at it and say, how can we balance the overall state of the nervous system? And we know that's actually done through chiropractic. It's done through other things too, and that's why, we try to look at the body as a whole and always leave my patients, at least, with, more homework to do than the time they spend in the office. Meaning, what are they doing in their life to balance all of those stressors, not just by changing their environment and making sure they're doing yoga once a week, or making sure they're cleaning up their diet, but truly looking at things that they can do to balance their nervous system out, whether it's doing some mindfulness, some journaling, some breathing exercises, meditation, different things that are going to help calm the system down. Because when we get off of that fight or flight or that chronic stress response, everything functions better. And that's one of the reasons why for any regular wellness patient, I almost always recommend chiropractic. Obviously, slight bias there, but we know that as we adjust the nervous system, we activate more that parasympathetic tone, or that kind of calming side of the nervous system, where sleep gets better, anxiety gets better. We've seen depression get better. I've seen kids with autism start speaking. I've seen so many things that have changed just by addressing the tone of the autonomic nervous system, that it really is that system that governs everything. So if we can do our best work at managing that, that's what, I'm not going to say it's the key to health, but it's a big proponent in it.
Dude, would most people benefit from chiropractic care in some sort of way?
Simply, yeah. Everyone has a nervous system, so when you think about it, it's not just the brain-body connection, but it's the neuroendocrine system, it's the neurodigestive system. Like, everything communicates from brain to body and then body back to brain. So if there's any sort of interference in that, then that's what we're looking to address. And that's one of the biggest things that we try to put the emphasis on, is understanding that it's so much more than managing pain, but it's how our body actually communicates and the removal of that interference. For example, the number one thing I see almost all of my adult patients for, not my small humans, is anxiety. Very few of them, it's actually pain anymore, but it's stress management, because we know that adjusting them does calm them down significantly.
Interesting. Yeah, because I know, even kind of going into this episode today, when I would think of chiropractic care, just from the way you see it as adjustments from the outside view, you think of skeletal system, right away.
Right.
And even a little bit of your muscular system, just kind of pulling joints and different angles where they don't want to be, you kind of adjust them back into place. So I've never really thought about it as the nervous system basically running what you do.
Well, you're really close to actually answering the question for me. So the bones are an answer to it, because if we look at the spine itself, the bony structures in the vertebra that make up the spine are a conduit to the spinal cord. So at every level of the spine, we have different nerves that come out and exit the cord that go and control different organ functions. So it's a lot more complex than hard bone on soft nerve. But if you look at it from the understanding that there's constantly an input going to the brain and an output from the brain going to the end organ system, every level of the spine also has joints. And the ones that run, kind of in the very back, they're facet joints. So just think back to anatomy during grad school, and every facet joint also has a joint capsule, and there's mechanoreceptors, and there's proprioceptive endings, and there's pain receptors, and all of those things. And it's constantly flooding the brain with input. And as those segments are moving like they're supposed to, it's constantly feeding the brain with good proprioceptive input. Now, when one of those segments aren't moving properly, or it's lost its juxtaposition, and we find what we call true subluxation, meaning that the joint's not moving properly and it's affecting the nervous flow, that slows down that proprioceptive input to the brain, and it increases what we call nociception. And nociception gets a bad understanding because most people translate it just to pain. But what it really translates to is noise. And that's why people will have long-lasting problems that they don't really know about until it does become painful, because it's been chronic and it's been there long enough. So really, it's noise in the system. And one of the analogies I used to use, but we really can't anymore because all TVs are digital now, is growing up, if the picture on the back or picture on the TV got fuzzy, you'd walk up to the back of the TV and you'd tighten the cable up a little bit, and the picture got clear. Nowadays, it's kind of like being on the edge of Wi-Fi, and your phones or your devices, they don't quite work as well as they should, but the closer you get to the router, the stronger signal source you're going to get. So that's really what we're trying to do more than anything, is as we adjust those subluxations and remove that nervous system interference, not only do we restore motion, but we then increase that balance of proprioceptive versus nociceptive input to the brain, which then allows the brain to relay a proper signal versus bad input.
That's interesting. That makes me think of the nervous system is so much more important than I ever did before.
Well, it's really easy to just kind of rudimentary think like brain tells the body, but we kind of lose the importance of how interconnected everything is. Like, for example, we were talking about parasympathetic versus parasympathetic. One nerve, the cranial nerve 10, vagus nerve, is one of only two cranial nerves that leaves the skull. The other one is spinal accessory nerve. It's going to tell the traps and SCM muscles what to do. But vagus, as it comes out of the skull, it goes down the neck, and it kind of branches out almost like a fishnet. And it's putting a contact on your esophagus, on your trachea, on your heart, on your lungs, and working itself all the way down to the digestive system. And it's the primary parasympathetic nerve for the entire body. One subluxation in the spine, in the upper cervical spine, well, that's where, so roughly 60% of all proprioceptive input from the body comes from the spine and how the spine moves. And roughly a third of that comes from the upper cervical spine alone. So you take something as important as vagus nerve, as it exits, it runs right behind the C1 vertebra, or what we call atlas. Well, if that's losing its juxtaposition and not moving properly, well, that's going to affect all of the nervous system activity from everything that branches off of vagus.
Yep. So, other than just the nervous system, what would you say is just the most important system in the body, just your overall health and well-being?
Well, I'm gonna cheat. I'm gonna say it is the nervous system. But if I was
of course,
yeah. I mean, it's I'm again chiropractor biased, but because it does control everything else, that's why we put such an emphasis on it. Because if you're in a chronic state of fight or flight, well, then it's gonna kind of retard the ability of any other system to properly function. And we know that digestive function goes down. We know that sleep gets worse. We know that anxiety increases, and the overall body becomes in a more stressed out state. Now, if I was going to put an emphasis on any system other than that, man, that's really tough.
I know, but I wanted to put you in that position to see what you said.
Well, I already cheated and kind of didn't listen because, I just didn't listen. But if I was going to put any other system on top of that, it would be a toss-up between honestly kind of the urinary system, just because of how it excretes toxins from the body, but the liver also does so much cool stuff, and somehow it's not its own system in and of its own. I'd probably have to then go with the endocrine system and kind of the liver, pancreas, and a little bit of nervous system anatomy too, because you've got the pineal body and all of those fun things. But I'd probably go endocrine just because it's the only other system that really tells the body what to do.
That's interesting, because I'd be over here if I was asked that same question. I'd be arguing the cardiovascular system, because if you don't have a heart that's pumping correctly, everything else in the body, it's not going to matter what's going on. And if your lungs aren't working correctly, you're not supplying your body with proper oxygen, so your brain's not going to be functioning properly, your heart's not going to be functioning properly, your muscles aren't going to be functioning properly. So in my world, because obviously I'm biased because I work in a hospital for cardiac rehab,
right?
So that is what I would put above all other systems. But now, after talking to you today, I realize how much more important the nervous system really is.
Well, especially when you tie the two of what the nervous system does along with the cardiovascular system, because you're right, you're absolutely spot on that if my heart dies, my brain is going to die too. But up until that point in time, it's my brain that's telling my heart when to beat, how often to beat, what to do with blood vessels, whether it's, am I stressed out? Am I trying to get away? Is it a true fight or flight? And am I trying to run away from someone scary, trying to keep me alive during a heart attack or during a car accident? I'm going to dilate all those blood vessels, I'm going to constrict all those blood vessels, and I'm going to try to shoot blood as fast as I can to my muscles so that I can run away from a dangerous situation. Similarly with the endocrine system, it's going to have a longer lasting effect, but that's, affecting overall metabolic activity. So it's fun because it's a feedback system, right? So if one system's not functioning properly, the rest of the systems are also affected. That's one of the things that makes, the human body so cool, is it's not like taking your car to the mechanic and you've got a transmission guy, and you've got a brake guy, and you've got a tire guy. The whole thing has to work together or it doesn't work at all.
Right. And to kind of go off of that, we both understand every single system in the body is important. But never in a million years would I have put the urinary system up there as one of the most important ones.
Well, yeah, because if you're not excreting your toxins, then you're just turning everything into a more obviously no more toxic state, but then your body has to then process, so then blood poisoning starts going up because it's not getting rid of everything it could. Or think of a case like rhabdo, where not only is that affecting cardiovascular tissue, but it's affecting muscle tissue, and we notice it through urinary secretion. So it's fun because it's, when you look at what the waste systems do, they can be really good indicators of the overall body health. Now, I don't do any urinalysis, and I'm damn sure not doing any stool samples. But the research behind it is kind of fun to look at sometimes.
And that's just interesting, coming from two similar fields, but two also very different fields. both in healthcare, but
yeah,
two very different fields of just how different our views can be and how important we see different things in the human body.
Well, right, yeah, it's all, what lens are we looking at? You're someone who's incredibly well trained, and especially working in cardiac rehab, that's what you're going to eat, sleep, and breathe all day. Same thing with chiropractic. I'm going to eat, sleep, and breathe it all day. That's why having conversations like this are fun, because it really kind of lets us kind of open those lenses up a little bit more and kind of broaden the overall scope of just human body understanding.
Yeah, it's because, like you said, we're eat, sleep, and breathing what we do. So now to open up to a whole nother world of just understanding, even with our knowledge that we have, it's kind of cool seeing it from another perspective.
Oh, absolutely.
So to kind of go off of that, I know that you're always reading and researching just the newest thing. So what is the latest thing that you've been really interested in reading about?
So lately, more than anything, I've kind of shifted off of professional development. I mean, I still read research articles all the time just because it's hard not to, but it's just from a kind of a personal development shift is kind of where I've mostly gone lately. So with this whole COVID pandemic that's kind of, touched everyone's life in some capacity, I've switched back to rereading a book called Mindset by Carol Dweck, and really kind of looking at the fixed versus growth mindset. So just because when this first thing started coming out, like everyone started getting more stressed out, and even myself at a certain level, I started changing some of my behaviors. So I use it as an opportunity to kind of reconnect with, understanding that, like we really do have an impact on how we look at a unique situation and how we individually problem solve it. So, just kind of, for example, or to let everyone else know that's never read the book, the fixed mindset is going to look at it and say, I'm born with a certain set of inalienable traits, and no matter what I do, they cannot change. And the growth mindset is the opposite of that. And it looks at it and says, well, no, I'm given a certain circumstance, but how I kind of change and adapt to that is really kind of the opportunity. So they do it. She references a lot of research in there, and a lot of personal research that she's done. And it's just kind of really eye-opening, like how we talk to kids, how we talk to our team members, how we talk to people around us, and then our own personal sides of that too. Like if we, for example, they research a group of first graders, and they give them all the same test, and they don't address how they did on the test. They just address the delivery. So instead of going up and saying, to one group, they said, hey, little Johnny, you guys did really good on your test. I can tell you are so smart. Whereas if they went over to little Susie and said, little Susie, you did so good on your test. I can tell you tried really hard. So just that little bit of how they worded what was said to them, we already start imprinting that growth versus fixed mindset. And what they found is that the group that, as the class got harder and the exam results didn't do as well, the group that the teacher instructed them and saying, hey, I could tell you tried really hard, that group was the one that did extra homework, they did extra credit, they did everything they could to better prepare themselves for the next test. The group that was, constantly told, well, you're just really smart. Well, if I'm really smart, why should I have to try harder? So that was a really kind of great opportunity for me to reconnect with that one. The other one is I'm trying to rekindle my love for getting up and working out first thing in the morning. And when I say rekindle, I mean establish, because I've never enjoyed it. I've never been happy picking up a barbell at 5 a.m. But the way my schedule's kind of shifted, like we talked, kind of off the record here, it got really crazy, and it's good and just distracting at times. So I've tried to kind of reestablish what that new norm is, because I had been doing it for a little while. I didn't mean I liked it, but I'm trying to embrace it as liking it now. Like as Ben Bergeron always says, you don't have to, you get to. So I'm trying to kind of change my mindset and stance on it a little bit. But there's a book called The 5 a.m. Club, and as soon as I finish reading Mindset, which I've got about a chapter and a half left, I think, on that. I was reading on the train a little bit earlier today, but didn't quite get to finish it. It's called The 5 a.m. Club, and it's exactly all around that. It's just trying to have the mindset for taking over your morning so that you can be more productive in there. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. On the deck after that, I've got 12 Principles for Life by Jordan B. Peterson, and then Atomic Habits, because I've heard nothing but good things about those books. So I'm trying to get through them all here pretty soon, but it's always good to have a queue built up.
So you're always reading, huh?
Always reading or always listening to podcasts. Sometimes if I'm on the train coming in and out of the city, it's not always the greatest to read sometimes. So then, throw a podcast or an audiobook in where I can.
What podcast do you listen to?
It depends on the day. If it was baseball season right now, there would be a healthy dose of those built in there. But some of my better ones I like is Chasing Excellence with Ben Bergeron, just because while it is mostly CrossFit oriented, he does such a phenomenal job of kind of taking the tactics or the mindset or the examples of what he's talking about in CrossFit, making it so much more meaningful for the rest of life. Now, obviously, we can relate with it a little bit more, and all of the listeners out there can do CrossFit just because it's a lot easier to talk about how you attack a WOD and how that can affect life if you're actually doing it. But I think that's incredibly good one. Ed Milet is another one of the ones that I really like. The Doctor's Pharmacy with Mark Hyman is phenomenal. He's a medically trained doctor who's also a functional medicine expert, and just incredibly thought-provoking as far as how we look at a lot of things. Those are the three that I probably listen to the most.
And now I just want to take kind of a step back for a second and kind of cover the CrossFit realm. And I just want to know what you think about this whole Greg Glassman thing that's going on.
So that's actually a really good conversation my wife and I had right when this first came out. So I've always thought Greg Glassman was kind of just a joke. I mean, he tried to make his persona bigger than anything else to fit his ego. At least that's the way it's always come across to me. That being said, I think what he did with CrossFit for the most part was really great because it is changing and shaping lives. That being said, I think his lack of accountability on everything that's gone around over the last couple of weeks has been truly disheartening. And I think the best decision that could have been made was for him to step down as CEO. Now, the only problem with that is even though he's no longer CEO, CrossFit's had other CEOs in the past. So until he's no longer the majority owner, it's not going to be enough for me.
And that's what I was saying too, is I made a podcast, I think it was like 2 weeks ago, kind of giving my spiel on the thing.
Yeah.
Just to start off on the whole CrossFit just philosophy, I thought Greg Glassman did a pretty good job. He wanted to use it for more overall health and well-being for a human rather than the sport of it.
Right.
Even though the sport is what took off and kind of got it its name, his overall philosophy of it is what I really enjoyed. Like eating meats, vegetables, fruit, some nuts and seeds, and so on and so forth. Yeah. That's a good way to look at things. But then, kind of as you were saying, he's kind of a joke of the way he handled everything else to do with the business, and the sport started to take off, and he kind of got selfish because he wanted the CrossFit health part to be the majority of what people thought of when they thought of CrossFit. And he just kind of went crazy and always tried to make a name for himself, because he's been in way more controversial things than just what happened over the past month.
Oh, absolutely. And I think this is kind of the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back, because it's kind of opened everyone up to what some of us have heard or known in the background about what his overall character was like. And you know, it's easy for affiliates to say, hey, you know what, I was tired of paying that $3,000 a year affiliation fee anyway, so I'm just going to use this as an excuse to drop it. But, you know, there's some prominent names that have left CrossFit. You know, they're one of their head programmers, and one of the heads of the company, Nicole, left. Guys like Ben Bergeron are changing his affiliates. Pat Sherwood are changing their affiliates. Chris Spieler are leaving their affiliates. So these are people that are going to know far more of the inner workings and the behind the scenes stuff than anyone else. And the fact that they've made decisions to either disaffiliate or to leave CrossFit temporarily, that speaks louder for me than anything else. Now, I do want to give Dave Castro his opportunity to really kind of shape up the business and see what his personal imprint is going to be. I think by starting off with affiliate regions is a really good start. Having representation from all the affiliate regions, I think, is going to be a really good response from CrossFit as far as listening to what the community is actually saying. Again, until Greg Glassman is no longer the majority owner, I think it's just kind of lip service at this point. But it is actions that I do appreciate and I do think will have lasting impact.
Right. Like, I'm glad that he stepped down and now Dave Castro's stepping up. But just for myself, I just don't feel like it's good enough until Greg Glassman's no longer a part or a majority part of being the owner of CrossFit. Because I feel like it was kind of a smack in the face to some people who knew what CrossFit was, but they didn't really know the inner workings and the behind the scenes like me and you. Because there's a lot of people who didn't know that he's basically the owner of CrossFit. They just think he steps down as CEO. He's done. He has no more ties with it at all.
Yeah, I mean, to a certain extent, like, yeah, we do owe Greg Glassman a lot because he was the one who really brought the CrossFit methodology and philosophy, just like you were saying, meats, veggies, nuts, seeds, some fruit, little starch, enough to promote growth, but not promote fat. Learn and play new exercises daily. That whole elite fitness in under 100 words. And I know I butchered it. But that combined with, high intensity or functional movements executed at high intensity, like those, constantly varied functional movements executed at high intensity. I know I missed something there. But like those shaped the lives for so many people, and it was doing so much. But yeah, he couldn't get out of his own way sometimes, it felt like.
I know, and I just let it downhill. But it's just a sad thing because CrossFit itself, if you look at the philosophy of it, that's where I got a lot of my philosophy from in health and fitness, and kind of where I direct a lot of people from is what you were just kind of spewing off there, is fitness in 100 words.
Yeah, it's done some really amazing things, and I hope that in the near future and in the long-term future, we can look back at this and say, yeah, they hit a little bit of a speed bump, but I'm just kind of hoping and praying that we're going to see leadership really start to kind of demand more and really shape this thing moving forward, because I do think under the right guidance, like, it can get even bigger than it was before and really affect the health of so many more people.
And right here, I want to pull up fitness in 100 words just so people kind of understand what me and you were talking about and where a lot of my philosophy of this podcast comes from. It's you eat meats and vegetables, nuts and seeds, some fruit, little starch, and no sugar. You keep intakes to levels that will support exercise, but not body fat. Practice and train majority lifts: deadlift, clean, squat, presses, clean and jerk, and snatch. Similarly, master the basics of gymnastics: pull-ups, dips, rope climb, push-ups, sit-ups, presses to handstands, pirouettes, flips, splits, and holds. Bike, run, swim, row, etc. Hard and fast. 5 or 6 days per week. Mix these elements as many combinations and patterns as creativity will allow, because routine is the enemy. Keep workouts short and intense, and regularly learn and play new sports. If you were to follow those 100 words for your entire life, there would be no other way that you could be healthier.
I couldn't agree more.
You're keeping good diet, you're keeping a variety of elements to keep your body in tune, and you're staying in shape by doing that. And you're going to be enjoying life because you're going to be going out and doing things, being active, being in the outdoors. And it's just, that's the way to live life, is in those 100 words. So that's why it's kind of a shame that Greg Glassman came up with those, and now you kind of see where he put himself in the CrossFit name.
Well, and it's a shame that it's happening right now, given where our world is, and especially as, we're here in Illinois, we're getting ready to hit phase 4 of reopening the state for, COVID restrictions this Friday. But when you look at those that COVID has affected the most, it's those that aren't living by those 100 words. It's the people that are obese, type 2 diabetic. And when we look at those things, we're looking at chronic systemic inflammation in the body. And it's really frustrating that from a media standpoint, there's only one person that I've ever heard during this whole time really come out and address, the kind of the biggest problem that's going on. And that's, it was Dr. David Katz. He was interviewed by Bill Maher fan per se, but this interview really spoke to me because he said the biggest thing that we're missing is lifestyle is medicine. When you look at living life by those 100 words, if people bought into that, we wouldn't see the chronic illness that we see right now. And it's those underlying conditions that are making people the most susceptible to everything we're seeing in the world right now. So it's a shame that his lack of composure came out when it did, because this, as states start to open back up, I couldn't think of a better training program than CrossFit to help people really change those lifestyle measures and really use lifestyle as medicine to build their overall health and well-being for the future and moving on.
I totally agree with that. But as we're kind of finishing up here today, is there anything that I didn't ask or cover that you want to bring up and talk about?
No, I think we actually did a really good job. The only thing that I would tell people to do is never stop asking questions. If a chiropractor, if a medical doctor, if a rehab tech, if your personal trainer, your CrossFit coach, whoever can't explain an answer for you, look it up on your own. And I mean that with love. Never stop asking questions, and never settle for someone to say they don't know. And that's great. Like, I love it when someone tells me they don't know, but I also want them to look it up for me too, because that's how science thrives. I mean, all science is it begins with a question of, is this the best way to look at this? And then how can I experiment to look at other models to see what works better, best, or even worse? And it just settles, kind of settles things in my brain. It's like, no, this is working better. So just keep asking questions, because that's how we're going to get a better understanding. And that's how we move the needle forward, is just always asking questions.
Yeah, definitely. So where can my listeners find you if they want to learn more about you and your practice?
They can find me on my website. My website is Catalyst Family Chiro at catalystfamilychiro.com. And then my email is catalystfamilychiro@gmail.com. I was trying to combine those two at the same time.
Well, great. I hope that our listeners kind of took something out of today, learn a little bit more, feel less hesitant about chiropractic care, or even reach out to either of us, because this has been great. I really appreciate you coming on here and just giving your take on this topic. I know I swear by having a chiropractor to be a part of my overall health, and I hope this just helps sway others to be able to step out of their comfort zone and overcome that fear, because there's so much good that can come out of it. And just please feel free to reach out to either of us if you have any questions in this realm, because the odds are, like you were saying, Jeremy, like, just ask questions. There's probably not going to be a single question that me or you can't answer in this field. And if there is, we're going to look it up and we're going to find out that answer for you. Because no question is too dumb. So please reach out if you feel the need. And
Absolutely.
So again, I just want to thank you, Jeremy, for coming on to this week's episode and for taking the time to share everything that we did. So have a great week, and I'll talk to you guys in the next podcast.